Welcome back to another episode of Boom and Bust, your home for NFL Draft Talk. I'm your host, Terry, and today, doing the draft recap for the NFC South. Sorry, got confused there. NFC South. And so, real quick again, going to go through, talk about some of the notable picks. Won't be talking about every single pick, but kind of the ones that stand out. And no grades, of course. Grades are silly after the draft. You only grade 3 years after the fact, once the players have played. All right, so let's kick it with the Atlanta Falcons. So 2 first-round picks, and I think this is really the story of their draft right here. 2 very interesting picks. Number 1, you get Chris Lindstrom from Boston College, who is a pretty solid interior lineman. Not shocked at him being a first round pick, being a top 15 pick. Now that's a whole different story. I'm not sure I agree with that. But looking at some of the guys they got, there seems to be a move towards a more physical run attitude. And so if that ends up being the case, we'll see. I know they've been primarily a lot of zone stretch in the last few years with Freeman and company. So they don't have Tevin Coleman anymore. It'll be interesting to see what type of scheme they're looking to do. But to me, there was other guys that were more versatile, including the guy that got drafted by another team in this division, and we'll talk about later. But Lindstrom, I think, was a solid, pick after 25 maybe. But definitely not at 14. But, you like a guy, you like a guy. To follow that up, you get Caleb McGarry in the first round. And here's what I will say. Again, as I mentioned before, if you are new to the channel, I'll repeat. Didn't get to dig into this draft as much as usual. Just, new lifestyle this year. A lot more time dedicated to other stuff. But I would say typically I get to the Senior Bowl and all that stuff. So I didn't see him at the Senior Bowl, where apparently he had some really impressive reps. But I will say the tape doesn't lie at the end of the day. And what I saw from him during the season, I would not have picked him with a pick outside of the 3rd round. He has a lot of size, yes, but he doesn't have a lot of core power. He doesn't have a whole bunch of athleticism. And so it was nice to see him kind of look better and quicker on his feet at the Senior Bowl. But overall, that is not a player that I would have picked. And so to see him in the first round was an absolute shock. But again, if you are telling me that there's a different attitude that they're looking to get on that O-line, maybe. Cause I just don't see these guys as the athletic stretch type. These are more, gap and power type O-linemen that are going to hit the guy in front of them and try to create holes. So, we'll see what they do. But if you're talking about as a pass protector, it'll be interesting to see what Caleb McGarry can bring. So, again, to me, I think the story for the Falcons doesn't go outside those 2 picks. 4th round, you get Kendall Sheffield, Ohio State prospect with pretty good athleticism that people were interested in. He went about kind of where I expected. And yeah, those are the main picks that I would focus on. So going forward, I think there's a lot of pressure on Lindstrom because I would say he got hyped as probably the best interior lineman in the group coming into the draft, but once you go through this draft, this interior lineman isn't half of what last year's was. So while you got interior lineman going pretty high last year, and it's like, yeah, he's an interior lineman, that makes sense. He's not the same caliber that these players were last year. So it'll be interesting to see how that works out. So then going to the Carolina Panthers, first round pick, you get Brian Burns at 16, which I didn't mind. A lot of people had some talk going into the night that he was falling and that people worried about his size. I mean, he looks fine to me. He was always a more slender type dude, but by the time you got to the combine, I thought he showed that he could put on some weight pretty well. He's definitely building his frame out more muscular, and I think he'll be perfectly fine. There's way more lankier dudes that came into the league. You talking about a guy with a real nice explosion, nice get off. Now, to me, would I have been looking at Montez Sweat here? Most definitely. And we talked some about his injuries, or injury medical concerns, I should say. But Brian Burns isn't a bad compliment if you're talking about that type of athletic edge rusher that you can mold. I don't think he is the run stopper that some of these other guys are, but I do think that you can easily mold that clay into something that can be prolific. And Panthers are looking for some more bite in that defense as they have lost some of their cornerstones over the years. Second round, you get Gregory Little, who is a very fair comp to Michael Orr. I mean, look, the guy has the build of NFL franchise tackle, didn't exactly play like one, and so I do think all the tools are there. They're just going to need a good coach that can put it together. I'm not sure I ever really seen Carolina with a great offensive line, so it'll be interesting to see how he progresses. But second round, I have no problem taking a swing at Gregory Little, who, like I said, he has all those intangibles. That's just a guy that you're going to have to really work his fundamentals and technique with, and I think he could either be a pretty good functioning left or a right tackle, to be honest. Third round, Will Greer. From what I believe, this is the first quarterback they picked in the draft in a while, since Cam or something like that. Interesting. I mean, Will Greer was getting a lot of hype. Some people thought he might be a first round pick. You know how that goes. So Cam has made it to a Super Bowl, but outside of that, he hasn't really delivered on what a lot of people think his potential is. Not all the way, at least. So I think it's just a case of trying to be smart. There's some smart guys that believe that you should always take a quarterback every year, and I don't think it hurts to start developing somebody. Again, after Nick Foles, the hot thing is to have a really nice backup, so not mad at that pick. Christian Miller, who I really loved at Alabama, but people had issues with his lack of length. And he was, I think, I wouldn't say prolific, but he was very impactful at Alabama on the edge. I think he's tough against the run. He's tenacious against the pass, and he just doesn't measure out the way that some people would like on the NFL level. But in the fourth round, I think that's a great get. Again, you're trying to add some more teeth to this team that needs some pass rush and needs some defenders to really create pressure, because they don't have the best secondary and they don't really have the best ends anymore. So I think that's a nice pick that'll go towards rebuilding there. All right, so all eyes will be on Brian Burns to provide that pressure, but overall, those are some of the guys I'm looking at. All right, so next up, going to the New Orleans Saints. And we start off in the second round with Eric McCoy out of Texas A&M. And this is a guy that I was talking about that I would have picked before Lindstrom any day. McCoy, I think, can play all three interior positions. Incredibly quick, incredibly strong. I mean, I really liked him. I wouldn't say he was better than a Billy Price or those guys from last year, but I would put him in that conversation. And so McCoy, to me, was by far the best interior lineman. I know there's a lot of hype around Bradbury out of NC State, but yeah, to me, it wasn't really close. So interesting that he dropped to the second round. I think the Saints went best player available, as I think they're close to figuring that offensive line out, to really getting a stable combination for the next few years, even though Breeze is, getting towards the end. I think they're getting close. And so if you don't trust Andres Pete going forward, well, I'm not even sure if he's still on the team, but if you don't trust those couple interior guys and you want McCoy to play guard, I think he's capable of doing that. So real nice pick. Chauncey Gardner was a safety that was getting a little more hype. A lot of the Florida guys were. coming into the draft. So getting him in the 4th round was a nice pickup. But overall, I think these are just, some depth players. This is a playoff team that didn't really need to find a whole bunch of starters. And Alize Mack out of Notre Dame will be interesting because he's more of a flex type tight end. To kind of see what he would look like with the team would be interesting because they've always had size, even since Graham left. But I wouldn't say they necessarily had any of these, receiver type tight ends in a while. So since Jimmy Graham. So will be interesting to see kind of what Alize Mack can do in this team. But like I said, when you got these perennial playoff teams that are more so adding depth, these are lower round picks. They don't really have to take too many big swings. Now, Tampa Bay Buccaneers, different story. So you got the number 5 pick. You go Devin White. Not mad at that pick at all. I mean, they're trying to revamp the defense. I don't know how long Gerald McCoy is going to stay around either. I mean, I think they're moving in a new direction. And you lost Quan Alexander, so everybody thinks this is a perfect fit. And I believe Quan was from LSU too, so funny. But Devin White, these new age linebackers, much like Deion Jones from LSU too, that's weird, but that run around and just hit people. So people that not necessarily downhill explosive, but sideline to sideline explosive. So can't be mad at that pick. Now, interestingly enough, and I don't know a whole bunch about Tampa. I know people were saying they were some of the worst passing defense in the league. And I guess that might be true because they went 3 straight corners. I mean, 2nd round, Sean Murphy is not somebody I thought would go in the 2nd round, but look, he had a great combine. He's got nice length. Tampa Bay has shown an affinity for the long corners. And so they go 3 corners in a row. Not necessarily all corners that I'm familiar with or that I thought would go that high. But it does show that they are putting emphasis on the secondary. But we've seen them go corner heavy before. And, I mean, they had a couple guys I really liked, but didn't really turn out to be anything. So, it'll be interesting. It seems like corners kind of go to die in Tampa. But, I think they have made at least clear that that's the direction they're going. Then you get Anthony Nelson in the 4th round. Now, I think that's very much in the line. Oh, man, I can't remember his name. I forget his name, but from Michigan State. He was the big DN they got, that a lot of people had questions about, but he was much more of your traditional run stuff in defensive end. Not so much the pass rusher. And I think Anthony Nelson fits that bill if you're in the even front. And they're bringing Todd Bowles in, so maybe they go to an odd front. Who knows? If that is the case, then I think he does fit more naturally as a 3-4 defensive end where he can plug holes and get pass rush off stunts and blitzes. So it'll be interesting to see kind of where they go with that. Yeah, so Devin White, all eyes on him. And then these corners too. You know what? When you take so many, you just really need to hit on one. So I think that kind of takes the pressure off the rest of the corners. But overall, yeah, so that is the breakdown for the NFC South. Not a whole bunch of picks between the playoff teams, but some high caliber, high round picks too to keep your eyes out for. So anyway, go down in the comment section. Let me know what you think about your team's draft. Any particular player you worried about or excited about. Share it around, get the conversation started. Thumbs up, subscribe, and thank you for listening.